we are finishing 5.4 first, and then we'll do 5.5. In 5.4, the last things that we were talking about were combining like terms. And those are terms that are have the same letters, and those letters have the same exponents. So we're going to continue with that. Okay, it's just going to be called something else. It's going to be called add. So in other words, when you're adding, what you're really doing is combining your like terms. Like on number 12, which is where we're starting. So we're in 5.4, number 12. So 2x to the 8 minus 3x to the third. And I want you to add that to 4x to the 8th plus 6x to the third. So again, combining like terms is really just a fancy way to say add. Okay, so all we're going to do is just add these straight down since they're like terms. And remember, when you are adding or combining like terms, you just keep the exponent, right? We just call it putting all the like terms in the same basket. You do not add exponents here. You only add exponents for multiplying the same bases. Okay, so here, if you have 2x to the 8th and you add that to 4x to the 8th, then you just have 6x to the 8th. And then same thing here. If you've got negative 3x to the thirds, then you add that to 6x to the third. So you just do negative 3 plus 6, which just gives you 3x to the thirds. Let me run and go get a eraser real quick. Okay, the next one. This one is subtract. So you've got 10x to the 6th minus x squared. Then minus all of this. So minus 4x to the 6th plus 2x squared. So you have to remember this 10x to the 6th minus 4x to the 6th. So this minus comes in here. So let's think. So here we've got 10 minus 4, which gives me 6x to the 6. Here, this is a negative 1x squared. Now remember, this minus comes all the way through these parentheses, right? We turn this into minus 4, 10 minus 4. This minus changes this also to a negative. So you've got negative 1 here minus 2. So don't forget, this minus, when you distribute it, changes this sign. So you've got negative 1 minus 2, which gives you negative 3x squareds. All right, number 14 is another subtract. You've got 13m to the third minus 8m squared plus 3m plus 11 then minus negative 15m to the third plus 7m squared minus 4m minus 13. So again, it wants you to subtract the whole bottom thing. So you need to think about this minus changing all of those signs. That's what a minus does. It changes signs. So let's see what that gives us. It turns this one into a plus. So you've got 13 plus 15, which gives you 28. M to the third. So what does it turn this one into? Since it's a plus, it turns it into a minus. So you've got negative 8 minus 7, which gives me negative 15, and those are m squareds. Here you've got a 3. This changes the sign, so it turns that into a plus. So 3 plus 4 gives you plus 7m. And it turns this into a plus. So you've got 11 plus 13, which gives you positive 24. So remember, if you have a minus in front of a group of terms, you need to think of that minus as going through and changing all those signs. All right, number 15. So you've got 5x squared minus 7x minus 30 plus 6x squared plus 9x. So again, we're adding, and again, all that adding is combining your like terms. So in other words, if there's a 5x squared here, I'm going to look for any other x squareds to put with it. So let's see, I can put this 5x squared and add that to the 6x squared, which gives me 11x squared. Now let's see, here's an x, so are there other x's? There's another x here, so that means we need to put those together. I've got a negative 7x plus 9x. So when I put those together, negative 7 plus 9 gives me positive 2x. And remember, you can do this in your calculator. All you would need to do, you just need to know the number part, right? Negative 7 plus 9 is what you would put in your calculator. Then here's a constant, which is a number that doesn't have a letter hooked onto it. Are there any other constants or just plain numbers to go with it? And since there's not, that just comes down. So minus 30. All right, number 16. For x to the third minus 6x squared plus 3x. Then the second, so add that to this parentheses, 6x to the third plus 8x squared minus 12x. So again, since there's a plus in the middle, that just means we're adding those parentheses together or combining like terms. So here's an x to the third, which means you're going through and looking for any other x to the thirds. So I see one here, and I see another one here. And so since I'm adding, I just straight put those in the same basket. So let's see, I've got 4 here plus 6 here. So all together, I've got 10x to the thirds. Then my squareds. Let's see, here's a squared, and here's a squared. So let's see, I've got negative 6x squareds here, plus 8x squared. So I've got a negative 6 plus 8, which gives me negative 6 plus 8 gives me positive 2 x squareds. After x squareds comes x's. So here's an x, and there's an x. So I need to put those together. So let's see, I've got 3 here and negative 12 here. So in other words, what's 3 plus negative 12 gives you negative 9 x's. All right, number 17. Two x to the fourth plus 4x to the third minus 4. Now I'm subtracting, so this is going to be different. Minus, in parentheses, 6x squared minus 4x plus 6. Now, we're still combining like terms. It's just that when you have a minus in front of your parenthesis, you have to remember that it changes all those signs. So if you wanted to, in the beginning, you could actually distribute this negative. So that's going to just turn that into a negative 6x squared, a plus 4x, and a minus 6. So if you wanted to just go ahead, that means you've taken care of the minus part of that problem. Then you can just bring this down. Now, everybody is exactly what their face value is, what their sign says they are. And you can just, so when you distributed this negative right here, you took care of the minus part of the problem, and now you are just combining like terms, starting with your highest exponent. So this is my x to the fourths. I'm looking for any other x to the fourths, and I don't see any. So I just bring this down. There's nobody else to put with it. And once you bring it down, you're done with that. You can just don't worry about it anymore. Then you move on to your x to the thirds. I've got 1 here, but I don't see any other x to the thirds to put with it. So I'll just bring it down. Plus 4x to the third, and I'm done with my x to the thirds. So then after x to the thirds, then I'm looking for x squareds, right? You want your exponents to go in order. So here's an x squared. And there's not any other x squareds to put with it, so I'll just bring it down. So minus 6x squared. So I'm done with my x squareds. So then I'm looking for my x's. There's the only x that I see again. So I haven't even had to combine anything yet. So I just bring down the plus 4x. And then after your x's come your plain numbers. I actually do see some I can combine here. I have a negative 4 here, minus 6. Again, you can put it in your calculator just like that. Negative 4 minus 6, which would give you minus 10. So the only thing that could combine was those plain numbers. So again, if you have a minus in front of a parenthesis, you could actually take care of the subtracting part of your problem on the first step by distributing that negative, and then you're just combining like terms. All right, last one for this section. Okay, so this one has brackets and parentheses. Inside these brackets, I do see parentheses. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to get rid of all those brackets and parentheses symbols and just have a bunch of terms that I can combine like terms with. So let's see. There's not a sign in front of this, which means the first thing I'm going to do is distribute that negative. This parenthesis, I can just bring all this down. There's not a negative to distribute in front of it. So I'm just going to bring all that down. When I distribute this negative, it's going to change all three signs. So it's going to make this one a negative 5m to the third. It'll turn that into positive 5m, and it'll turn this into negative 6. I can also go ahead and distribute this negative. So let's see, it turns this into minus m squared. And it turns this into minus m. So now I don't have any parentheses, no brackets, nothing like that. I'm just going to start putting all the same eggs in the same basket. And you always start with your highest exponent. So looking through here, it looks like my highest exponent is this m to the third. So I'm looking for any other m to the thirds, and I don't see any, which means I just bring that term down. There's nothing to combine with it. You bring it down with its sign. So I have negative 5 m to the thirds. And I would go ahead and cross this out so you don't try to add it with something else later. That's done. After m to the thirds are m squareds. So looking for m squareds. Here's one. Just go through your list looking for anybody else that has an m squared. And there's one. So you want to put those together. I've got a 9 here minus 1 there. So you put those together, you've got 8, right? 9 minus 1 gives you positive 8. M squareds, and then cross them out because you're done with them. All right, after your m squareds, then you're looking for m's. So let's see what we have along the m. So there's an m. There's an m. And there's an m. So I've got 3 terms that I'm going to put together. So let's see, here I've got 4 plus 5, so that gives me 9. Then I have minus 1. So all together I've got 9 minus 1, which gives me 8 m's. So cross out your m's. Done with those. And after your m's comes your plain numbers. All I have left are plain numbers, right? That one there and this one here. So put those together. So again, if you weren't comfortable, if you didn't like to do this in your head, what would you put in your calculator? Negative 9 minus 6. So if you put that in your calculator, negative 9 minus 6 gives you negative 15. All right. Next section is 5.5. So now we are going to be multiplying with x's, with different exponents and things like that. So now we do need to remember what the rule is when you are multiplying with x's. Okay? What's the rule say when you have multiplying the same letter together? The rule is you are going to add their exponents. So that would give me x to the 8th. Okay, so we need to remember that. Let's look at number 1. Number 1 has 4 different parts to it. So here I'm multiplying. Where does that rule apply? That is an exponent rule only. We're still multiplying, which means when you multiply 4 times 7, those aren't exponents. Those are plain numbers, and they multiply just like we've always multiplied since we learned how. So 4 times 7 still gives me 28, like it always has. Here's the rule when you are multiplying x squared times x to the 8th. That's when you use the exponent rule. When I'm multiplying x's together, I'm going to add their exponents. So this would give me x squared times x to the 8th gives me x to the 10th. The second part of it, negative 4 times 7 gives me negative 28, right? Because I have a negative times a positive. I'm multiplying these x's together, which again means I'm going to add their exponents. So I've got x to the 8th times x squared, which again gives me x to the 10th. Now, this is the other exponent rule, or one of the other exponent rules that we talked about. And again, it's only an exponent rule. It doesn't change anything else that we're doing. So if you raise an x to more than one exponent, that exponent rule is I'm going to multiply those exponents together. Okay? It doesn't change what I do with this, though. This does not mean 4 times 2. What does 4 to the 2nd power mean? That means multiply 4 times itself, right? So this parenthesis tells me that I need to raise everything that's in here to the 2nd power. Well, 4 to the 2nd power gives me 16, just like it always has. Now I've got 2 exponents. Now is when I use the exponent rule that says if you raise an x to 2 different exponents, you multiply those exponents together. So that's going to give me x to the 16th. And the last part of number 1, everything in here is going to the 2nd power. So the first part of this says negative 7 to the 2nd power. What does that mean? That means multiply negative 7 times itself. Well, when you multiply negative 7 times negative 7, it gives you positive 49. I'm raising the x to the second and second again. So I'm going to multiply those exponents together to get x to the fourth. Okay, so again, multiplying same x's, add their exponents. So let's look at number 2. Multiply 7x squared times 2x to the 6th. Again, multiplying this 7 times the 2 is 14 like it always has been, right? Those don't have exponents. Those are just plain multiplying. 7 times 2 gives me 14. Now I am multiplying x's, which means I will add their exponents. So x to the 2nd times x to the 6th will give me x to the 8th. Right, number 3, same thing. 9a to the 8th times negative 5a to the 6th. Right? 9 times negative 5 gives me negative 45. A's work just like x's. If you're multiplying a's together, you're going to add their exponents. So when I multiply a to the 8th times a to the 6th, I'm going to get a to the 14th. Right. Number 4. Same thing. Multiplying negative 4 times negative 6. That gives me positive 24, right? Because you have a negative times a negative. Multiplying your x's. X to the 6th times x to the 6th will give me x to the 12th when I add their exponents. All right, number 5 looks a little different. You have 8x times, then in parentheses, you have 7x plus 9. So just like always, the way that you remove parentheses is you distribute what is bumping up against the parentheses through it by multiplying. Okay? The only thing different now is I'm going to have to remember that exponent rule. So I've got 8x times 7x. So 8 times 7 gives me 56. So I've got x times x here. Those exponents are 1s, right? If you don't see them, they're 1s. Which means if I'm multiplying x to the 1st times x to the 1st, it's going to give me x to the 2nd. So I distribute it to the 7x. Now I'm going to multiply this 8x times the 9. So the only thing I'm going to have here is the 8 times the 9, which gives me positive 72. Now I still have an x. I just don't have another x to add any exponents to me. So that just means it just stays at x. You've got 8x times positive 9 72x. Right, number 6. 6x to the third times, in parentheses, 7x squared minus 2x plus 8. So I'm going to distribute that 6x to the third to all 3 of these terms. So let's see, what do I do first? I've got 6x to the third times 7x squared. So I've got 6 times 7, which is 42. What are my x's going to do? I've got x to the third times x squared. So multiplying x's means I'm going to add their exponents. So this one will give me x to the 5th. So I'm done with this. Now I need to multiply the 6x to the third times that negative 2x. So watch your signs. You've got 6 times negative 2, which gives you negative 12. X's here and here, which means I'm going to add their exponents. That's important that you know that that's a 1 now, right? Because you've got x to the third times x to the first, which gives you x to the fourth. So now I'm done with the negative 2x. My last one is I need to distribute that 6x to the third times the positive 8. So 6 times positive 8 gives me positive 48. Now this x to the third, there's no more x's to add exponents to it, which means it just stays x to the third. You don't add any exponents to it because this didn't have any x's to add any more to it, which means it just stayed the same, x to the third. Right, number 7. Negative 2x squared times negative 3x squared plus x minus 7. First things first, negative 2x squared times negative 3x squared. So when I multiply here, watch your signs. I've got negative 2 times negative 3, which gives me a positive 6. X squared. So add those exponents, which will give you x to the fourth. So I'm done with the negative 3x squared. And now it goes to the next term, which is just an x. So let's think, what's in front of this x? It's a positive 1. So I've got negative 2 times positive 1, which just gives me negative 2. And don't forget, that has an exponent that's a 1 there. So x squared times x1, if I add those exponents, I get x to the third. So I'm done with the 1x. And the last one. Negative 2 times negative 7. So since they're both negative, when I multiply them together, I get a positive 14. Now, this one has x squared. This one doesn't have any x's, so I'm not adding anything else to this exponent. So it just stays x squared. the last three problems are going to look like this. They're going to have two parentheses, and in each parenthesis, they're going to have two terms. I'm still going to distribute just like I have on my other ones, okay? It's just that I have more to distribute. This x will be distributed to both terms in the other parenthesis. And then when I'm done with that, this 4 will distribute to both terms in the other parentheses. Now, when you have two parentheses with two terms in each, there's an acronym that you're going to hear a lot. You're going to hear it now, you're going to hear it in college algebra, you're going to hear it all the time. So, that acronym is called FOIL. And it just is explaining the order of this distribution. Okay, the F is going to stand for first, which means the first step you're going to take is to multiply the first term in the first parenthesis and the first term in the second parenthesis. So in other words, it's just this distribution. So first means first and first and first and second. So let's see, x times x gives me x squared, right? Because they both have ones. And so if you're multiplying x's, you're going to add their exponents. So that's what x squared comes from. Then you're going to do the O, which is outer. What the outer means is the outermost terms is the next two things you're going to multiply together all the way on the outside. So these two right here, which again, it's just distributing this x to this 2. Those are the very outermost terms now. So you've got x times 2, which is positive 2x. When you multiply a number times a letter, it just hooks them together. After the outer is the inner. Which is actually the start of distributing the 4. But it's the inner two most terms, which is positive 4 times x. Again, when you multiply a number times a letter, it just hooks them together. So positive 4x. And first, outer, inner, and this one is last. And what that means is the last term in this parenthesis times the last term in this parenthesis. So that's 4 times 2, which gives you positive 8. So again, when you hear the word FOIL, that's going to mean first, outer, inner, last. I'll leave this up here for our last two. Now, all the time, not 100% of the time, but so many percent of the time. After you FOIL, those two terms that are in the middle, do you see how they're like terms, right? They're both plain x's, which means I don't need to write them apart. I can put them in the same basket. There's no other x squareds to go with this one, so I'll just bring it down. But I can put these x's together. Now, here's the confusing part. I'm not multiplying. I'm combining like terms, which is adding. When you're doing that, you don't add exponents. Here's where you add exponents in the multiply part. Now, I am just putting these together in the same basket. So I have 6 x's all together. And then bring down the plus 8 because there's nothing to combine it with. So again, first, outer, inner, last. Then you'll look at your middle two terms. A lot of times they're going to be able to be pushed together. And when you put terms together, you don't do anything with their exponents. Okay, let's look at number 9. 6t minus 5 times 6t plus 5. First, outer, inner, last. What does first mean? It means the first term in this parentheses times the first term in the other parentheses. So let's do that one. You've got 6t times 6t, which gives me 36. Now remember, I'm multiplying t's, which means I need to add their exponents, so that's going to give me t squared. So I've done my first. Now I need to go to my outer, which means the very most outside terms from the whole problem. So that means I've got a 6t times a positive 5. So 6 times positive 5 is going to give me positive 30 t's. My inner means the two most inside terms I'm going to multiply together. Careful with your sign. You've got negative 5 times positive 6t, which is going to give me negative 30t. So I've done first, outer, inner. Now I'm going to do my last. And what does that mean? It means the last term of this parenthesis times the last term in this parenthesis. So let's see, I've got a negative 5 times a positive 5, which gives me negative 25. So, like I said, a lot of times after you FOIL, the middle two terms will be like terms. Those are both t's. But look what you have. You've got a positive 30t and a negative 30t. So when you put those together, they actually cancel each other out, right? A positive 30. If you've got 30 minus 30, you have nothing. You don't have any t's. So all you're left with is the 36t squared and a minus 25. All right, last one. Five x plus 3 times 5x plus 3. Oh, I didn't mean to erase this. First, outer, inner, last. So the first term in this parenthesis times the first term in the other parenthesis. So I've got 5x times 5x. So that's going to give me 25. And they both have x's, right? So since you've got an x times an x, that's going to give you x to the second. Outer. The very, very, very outside terms together. All the way on the outsides. So I've got a 5x times positive 3. So 5 times positive 3, so that's going to give me 15x. My inner. Positive 3 times positive 5x. Again, 3 times 5 gives me another 15x. And my last. So the last term in this parenthesis times the last term in the other parenthesis. Positive 3 times positive 3 is positive 9. Again, look at your middle terms. These don't first one cancel because you had positive 30 and negative 30. That's why those cancel. Here I've got 15 plus 15. So you are going to put those together. And again, remember, when you are putting terms together, you do not add exponents. If you've got 15x's here and 15x's here, all that means is you have 30 x's all together. Okay, so you've got 25x squareds. All my x's means I have 30 x's. Bring down the plus 9. Okay? We should have done the next section, but we didn't. Okay, so that is it for what we're going to cover this week. So I will put this in the week 8 folder after I'll convert it to a YouTube.